Welcome to another episode of the Twins Talking Up podcast. If we were to take a snapshot of your business, what would people say your brand is? Today, we're going to look into this and address so much more about how to build your brand with our special friend and our guest, Shala Graham. Shala is a brand strategist, speaker, and writer. She's also the founder of Calling Qualified, a nonprofit ministry focused on inspiring women to pursue their God-given calling and gifts. She's also the owner of Creative Colony, a co-working space and community of professionals within the Washington, D.C. metro area. Shala, welcome to our program.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
From time to time, when Dave and I are speaking, we will, and we say this on every podcast and every episode, but we will let you know who's speaking because at times we do sound alike. So this is Danny. One of the great things about our special guest today is that she, along with Dave and I, have something very close in common. We went to the Howard University. So she is a graduate of Howard University, and I would like to make sure that she feels welcome. She is a fellow Bison, and she is a great supporter, just along with the vice president as well, who was also a Howard graduate. So just to let you guys know, there's nothing but awesomeness that's going to be happening today because she is a graduate.
I resist wearing my Ladies of Howard University swag. I was like, yes, I was ready to be extra, but I was like, dial it back, Shala, dial it back. It's going to be okay.
Well, don't dial it back too much, Shala, because this is Danny, by the way, because I want you to tell the community a little bit more about Creative Colony, your photography business, your ministry. You have so much going on, and your hands is touching so many different things here and there. It is exciting. We'd love to have the audience know a little bit more about everything that you're doing.
Sure. Sometimes I feel a little schizophrenic because there are so many things going on, and I'm wondering, like, how are you going to manage all of these things? But a few years ago, as I was working on understanding my own brand, and what I am most passionate about as I was building my speaking platform, the phrase, the positioning that I came upon or developed was courageously chasing the call. And I realized that was something that tied all the things together, that made me feel a little less I'm just doing random things, or from what from the outside looking in may feel random. There's a co-working space, there's a photography studio, there's this ministry aspect, but what it means for me is no matter what I'm doing, my role is to help people courageously chase their calling, whatever that is. And I do believe that all work is sacred work. Like if I'm putting my pastor hat on, I think of all work as sacred work, and it only becomes secular when you pull your faith out of it. And so when I'm in my co-working space, I'm helping local, mostly creative entrepreneurs chase their calling, right? I'm providing infrastructure and systems so that they can do what they need to do and focus on whatever it is their task is. When I'm working with women as a photographer, I do headshots and brand photography. I'm helping them courageously chase their call. I'm developing creative assets that are going to help them build their websites, create their social media followings, all of those kinds of things. So I'm actively working to help them chase their calling. And then, of course, in ministry, in my ministry, I'm coming alongside of women, inspiring and mobilizing them to chase their calling specifically to ministry so that they can do the thing that is on their heart. And so that's kind of like a high level glimpse of the things that I do and how they're connected and how it still fits with me. And I don't feel like I am necessarily just being pulled in a ton of different directions. It's a miracle to kind of manage my time so that I still have time to eat dinner with my family and play lots of mahjong and phase 10 in the evening. Like I still have to have that time in because my mama don't play about her like phase 10 mahjong time. We need to get that in. And so I just want to make sure that I am still staying true to who I am, true to who God has created me to be. And I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to kind of work in what we call, vocational and, kind of uh, regular non-vocational work.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Shala, I'd love that. I know exactly how that feels when you're serving as a minister and you're working with professionals and you're living like in so many ways in two different worlds. But what's amazing about what you've done is you blended them all together to where it really fits around you and your brand. And that's why we wanted to have you on. We wanted to really share with our listeners the value, importance of branding in the right way where you stay true to yourself. So I love that. And matter of fact, for our listeners out there, her creative colony space is amazing. Love that space. Great space for professionals. They can go there and work away from the noise of what they might be familiar with to come into a space where there's incredible opportunities to get their pictures taken. They can get studio time. They can get a private little office there, all to be able to get their support. So, Charlotte, what you do really fits together in creating a sense of branding in every area, from ministry to working with professionals. This is what you do. You recently conducted a workshop entitled Build Your Brand Right. For those of you that may not recognize the importance of a solid and effective brand, workshops like this are invaluable. Charlotte, what does it mean to have a great brand, and how can you help organizations to build the right brand?
I think a great brand, well, one, let's define what a brand is, right? Because I think a lot of people get confused, and they directly associate their brand with their logo, their graphics, their colors, and all of those things do play a part in what we call a brand's visual identity. But your brand, the simplest definition of it is your reputation, right? What are you known for? And so, whether or not someone puts up a picture of you, a logo of your company, they're going to start thinking things. Right. They're going to start thinking about what you're like and what you stand for and how you resonate. So whether you say, Kamala Harris, or you say Martin Luther King or Martha Stewart, right? All of these people, they make you think of something, right? And that is their brand. And so all we can do is try to manage our brand. It's kind of like when you're in high school, whether or not you were intentionally trying to, you developed a brand, right? You developed a reputation as the jock, as the artsy fartsy creative person, as the nerd, as the, ditzy, like you created a brand and you didn't even have to be like, oh, let me like strategically think about what you just existed. And as you existed, people began associating things with you. And so when you had a communications crisis around your brand, something happened. Rumors started happening, and you probably went into brand management mode. Like, how do I fix this? How do I get them to like think of me differently? How do I manage my reputation? Companies do the exact same thing, right? When they hit the news and stuff ain't right, their PR person, their communications office goes into overdrive trying to fix the crisis of the brand, right? And they're trying to pair positive things instead of negative things with the brand. And so that's kind of like our foundation of what the brand is, right? It's this reputation that you're trying to manage from however people think of you. And I've been talking so much that I totally forgot about what your question was, bro. But I feel like I was answering it on some level.
You are, because you had to set the foundation. This is David.
Yes.
She had to set the foundation of what a brand is. And it's such
Exactly.
a great point because it's what our reputation is, it's what we're known for. And in high school and growing up, I was always Dan's little brother, even though we're identical twins. So I had to build my own reputation. And this is what's amazing about us coming on this program. But Shala, I was asking about your workshop you recently did entitled Build Your Brand Right. And what does that mean for organizations and how can they build the right brand?
Yes. And so what it means is making sure that your foundation is set. So what I often find is people have created things that they like, their visual things. They've started mobilizing programs and activities and services, but what they're missing are their brand values, right? Brand values, the things that are central to you, that are core, these are the things that should point you true north and should help you filter all of your opportunities, the things that you say yes to and no to. And I ran across this a lot when I ran a design firm. We focused on nonprofit organizations. And as we would go into reworking their website, for instance, we would see all of these random programs that were listed. And I was like, how is this connected to this or to that? And honestly, the answer would sometimes be so and so came to us with 20 grand and they wanted us to do this program. We got bills to pay. And so we did the program.
Mm.
And I was like, that's real. I can appreciate that. But what it did is it made things seem so hodgepodge. But if they were able to stick to their values and not be driven by the dangling carrot of money, they would be able to say, you know what, these are the things that we value. These are the things that we are committed to. This is our true north. And they would filter their opportunities and the things that they were going to do through their brand values. And so it's important that as you're building your brand, right, you know what your values are. So oftentimes people start with all the other things and then they're like, oh, values sound good. Let me slap some values on that. As opposed to saying, you know what, let me identify what the things are that I really value, that this company values, that we stand for, tried and true. These are the things that we will reward, right? That we will acknowledge as the things that we really want to do. And so that sets the tone, because oftentimes when people are trying to build the brand, right, there is what I call the brand power mix. So there is frequency and consistency, right? So people are like, I'm saying the same thing over and over and over again, right? Frequency and consistency. But when they're missing the values, when they're missing the things that are really going to help them connect with their audience and with who they are, you're just kind of like a resounding gong, right? No one wants to hear that. You just keep talking and talking and talking, but you're not connecting with the things that really matter. And so that's what I call this brand power mix. You need to be frequent, you need to be consistent, but you need to be rooted in your values. And so start with your values, then build on top of that. Once you know your values, then you can begin to discern what your personality is, right? The tone, the way that you deliver, the way that you design things, right? Your brand personality comes out of your value. So if some organizations, like irreverence is like a value of theirs, right? That's probably like a more edgy, funky, progressive kind of thing, So if I value irreverence, then my personality is probably a little more sassy, a little more bold, a little more edgy, a little more funky, right? And so what's helpful as designers, right? This was always the thing that I hated the most when I ran a design firm. We would work so hard to develop whatever the creative thing was, and we would present it, and they would be like, you know, I don't know what it is, but it's missing something, and I'll let you know when I see it. And I'm like, that is not helpful feedback. Like, I don't know what you are looking for. However, if they were able to say, you know what, we kind of value irreverence, and we need this to be more funky. We need this to be more edgy. It's missing those specific brand personality traits. That's so much more helpful. That's helpful to your designers. That's helpful to your communication strategists. That's just helpful to everyone else, because they actually have words that they can use to articulate what it is that they are looking for. And so those are just two of the things that are important to building your brand, right? Because if you can't articulate like what really matters to you and how you want to come across, then you got some problems. You're not like being the best partner in kind of this creative experience. And then from there, you're developing your target audience, because it's way easier to talk to a very specific person than to everyone, or to multiple types of people. It's just painful, because you start to be like, oh, well, I don't want to turn this person off, or I don't want to do this. I'm it just gets way more difficult if you're not super honed in on who that person is that you're supposed to be talking to in your business. And then you can develop your messaging, which a lot of people will transform into their elevator pitch, right? The thing that they say, that they know what really drives what they do or how they describe what they do. And then you can get into your positioning, what makes you unique. In whatever your industry is, what makes you unique. And because of that uniqueness, your audience receives what results. And so that becomes your unique selling proposition or your value proposition as people describe it. And so those become this kind of overarching summary of that brand and being able to build it right so that you can go forth into whatever your services are, website creation, content strategy, all of those things can multiply outside of that. So after you develop your brand, then you get into your marketing, right? Branding is the foundation of marketing. So that is why it is important for an organization to build their brand right.
Awesome. This was like I would say that this is Danny, by the way. This is a summary and a little hint. Now, listen here, audience. If you have a business, take this into note. And here's the reason why. Having a brand, as Shala said, is going to really help you to stand out. It's going to really help you have the foundation. Then you can go into your marketing aspect. When we think about every year, the Super Bowl, and I want to bring this up real quick, is that every year I find, and my wife find, we have great conversations about the Super Bowl commercials more than the Super Bowl itself. And then you see in social media, people want to talk about which commercial they spent hundreds of $millions for a 30-second spot or a 1-minute spot. So when we think about these commercials, we always did the commercial go back to the origination of what the company stands for? And when you think about the biggest brands in the world, Nike, Disney, Amazon, Google. I mean, Amazon, if you ever look at the box, it looks like a smiley face, right? And it actually goes, the smiley face starts at the letter A, it goes to the letter Z. So what Amazon's trying to say is that we're going to make you smile and happy from A to Z. That's what the A to Z means. And then you think about Apple, and they were actually listed as the #1 brand in the world, according to Forbes. And they have a little bite out of the Apple itself. But I remember the days. I mean, I have a MacBook. My wife has a Dell XPS platform, and our kids have HP laptops. So they're like, we're splitting the household. I'm Apple, and everyone else is non-Apple. And I'll be switching over to a Windows environment pretty soon because of my relationship with Microsoft. But when I think about Apple, it was always came down to they make the best quality. They don't have to have the most functions. They don't have to have the most features, but they make the best quality. And because the quality is excellent, you're willing to spend more and pay more than something that's less expensive that's going to fall apart. And so when we think about these brands and the value they put together, it goes right back to what you said earlier, Shala, as you was giving your dissertation for everybody, because I think it's so important. And I have clients, Dave and I, we have our clients, and we look at our clients' websites. We look at their social media pages. We look at everything about it. Nothing about their website states anything about who they are or what they are. There's nothing about them that says, okay, so you're happy, you're not happy. I mean, people forget that even the color of their logo gives a certain meaning, a certain feeling. And that's part of your brand. Not all that together, it just blows me away how people don't think about that enough. And here you are specializing in that. From the moment you started, and the example you gave that cracks me up, and Dave mentioned earlier, was a high school, right? Your brand goes all the way back to high school. We were called the twins. People didn't even try to determine who Dave and Danny were. We were called the twins. And Dave, you did brand yourself in high school, and you still do it to this day. Even at Howard University, Dave wore suits every day. If he didn't wear a suit, he dressed up. I didn't care what I put on. I just put on a t-shirt and walk out the door because I did engineering, right? I was an engineering and physics student, double major at Howard. Dave was the School of Business guy. So he was Mr. President of the International Business Society. He was this, he was that. He always wore a suit. So when people looked at us for the first time, they can just look and say, okay, that's Dave. He's the sharp one. He's going places. That's Danny. You can tell he just woke up, ate some cold pizza, and went straight to the lab. So I just want to bring that up, Shala, that you bring up some great points, and it's bringing back some interesting memories.
Yeah. I wasn't a twin, but my older brother was a senior when I was a freshman, and he was Mr. Central, star of the football team, won state in track. So I didn't have a name until like my junior year. I was little Eddie or little Wilson for all of high school, and he did his job as a big brother to threaten all male population in my high school to stay far, far away from me. So it took until about my junior year for people to forget that there was this looming big brother who would hem you up real quick. And so I was like, oh, it was probably for the best. It was probably in my best interest to have Big Brother set the
Yeah.
tone
Yeah.
for who was, going to step to me. So bless
That's
the Lord.
funny. That's funny.
Thank
So
God for Big Brothers. You
right,
better
that's right. And Shala, by the way, this is David. When I think about branding, and we're going to talk about this in a moment, but if you're listening to this program and you're enjoying the content, you're enjoying our guest that's here with us today, take a moment and go ahead and subscribe to our program. It doesn't matter what platform you're on, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, iHeart, or even Apple, go ahead and hit subscribe. And if you really like what we're doing, become a sponsor of the program. Now, let me go back to Shala here and ask this question. We talk about branding. We talk about corporate branding. We're talking about personal branding, the whole concept of reputation. It makes me think of the word authentic. Authentic being a true reflection of who you are. When you work with your clients, Shala, how much of this is a soul searching process or a time of them to really learn to reflect within to say, this is the way you got to present yourself?
I think it is foundational. I think so much of it is this soul searching, because here's what happens. If you aren't walking in step with who you were designed to be, you will feel out of step. You will feel disconnected. And people start using words like, this thing is soul sucking, right? It is not what they really, really want to do. And it's painful. It's painful to continue to do something that is not true to who you are. And so that's why you have people going from being like lawyers to photographers. Like they're like, no, I just need to like create. I just need to like be free, because there's something in them that maybe they were good at it. And here's the thing, you can be good at something, but that's not what you're called to do. And so oftentimes we want to do the thing that we're good at. And that's something that I have struggled with at times, because I'm like, but I can do this, I can do that. I was like, I got all the talents and I need to use all of them. But at the same time, I'm like, well, what's good and what's great? And how do I stay in tune with what I'm really supposed to be doing? And so when you're, especially if you're doing like personal branding or you're a solopreneur, where the brand really does revolve around you, it is a very intensive, soul searching kind of process, where when I'm kind of coaching people through like, well, what is the message that you're intended to speak on or write about? I'm usually asking them questions to help them dig, right? What rises to the top? What are you most passionate about? If there's nothing else that people get from all of your writing and all of your speaking, what do you want them to be left with? What is it that kind of like wakes you up in the morning? And that's how I help them to define, like, this is your brand. This is your message. This is your unique voice and your tone of voice. Because sometimes, especially in the speaking world, your story may not be like one of a kind, if you will. Like there are multiple people who speak about, I don't know, losing a child or dealing with cancer, or right, there are lots of people who have similar stories, but your perspective on it, your personality, your tone, the way that you connect with people, it's your own, right? That's your own brand. And whether, so people could have similar stories, but one person may gravitate toward you and another person may gravitate toward another person. And that's some of the kind of beauty of what we do kind of as a society, is that there's enough fish in the sea for everyone to succeed. And it becomes being able to understand your own worth and your own value, and realizing that you're not called to everyone, right? Every design firm is not meant to work with every company. So you're needed. You just have to know who your audience is. You just have to know who you're supposed to be working with, what budget they have, what audience they have. So for me in my design firm, I knew that we worked with nonprofits. They were usually nonprofits that were in kind of a humanitarian justice or like very people oriented. We didn't do a ton of environmental. We didn't do a ton of like animal things. We really cared about people, homelessness, education. And so those were the organizations that we worked with most. And because we niched down and said we work with nonprofits, because this was scary. It was scary for me to say, no, we don't do professional services. We don't do tech companies. We don't do that, because in our mind, we had the scarcity thing happening where we feel like, no, I gotta cast the net super wide because I can't miss the opportunities. The interesting that happened is that all of a sudden business grew, because when we knew our brand and who we were marketing to, our writing spoke specifically to them. We could speak specifically to board members, volunteers, donors. And so they came to us saying, well, you get me. You know what we need. You understand our problems. We want to work with you. So it made it far easier to close business because we knew our brand. We knew how to project our brand and how to connect with the right audience. So it is important, and it was important for us in terms of, going back to like that soul searching. This working with organizations was important to me. Nonprofit organizations was important to me, right? When we looked at our values, excellence, honesty, and compassion, there was a deep intrinsic need to be compassionate toward people, to be compassionate toward their needs, toward one another, to provide excellent service, to be honest about what we can and cannot do. And so because we valued particularly compassion, it drove us to work with these organizations. And in the hiring process, praise God for hiring processes, I was able to vet the right people to be on my team. Because if your if your cover letter did not speak to this desire to serve people, to help the poor, to do whatever that thing was, I was like, you're not right for the team. This is just a job for you. I don't need people who are just a job for them. I need people who care. I need people who feel like, yes, I want to provide these organizations with the best service because I value what they do. And one of the things that we did as a company is we sponsored Kids Through Compassion International. So we were writing to them. And granted, it is a faith-based organization, and my employees may not have necessarily shared like the same deep faith. But I was like, look, if you can't care about a kid who is poor, who does not have, whose family is living off of $30 a month, and write to them and just love them generally, you're not the right fit for this company because you don't value compassion. And so again, because I knew who I was and how I wanted to lead this organization and the kinds of people, right, that I needed to have around me, it made it easy for me to say yes or to no to people, to opportunities, and to know who it is that we really wanted to serve as an organization.
Well, this is Danny. There's a couple of nuggets of wisdom that you talked about, and I want to get to a little bit of it, but not too much, because I think about that. I'm taking lots of notes, right? One reason why I'm taking notes is my company, and my brother and I are both entrepreneurs, which is phenomenal. My wife's an entrepreneur, so we live in a household of every day it's uncertain. But my clients, we teach our clients to specialize and verticalize. And Microsoft they desire to have my clients specialize and verticalize. And one of my friends I went to graduate school with, who's a client of mine as well, specializes and verticalizes in his IT space. He has become the known to become the individual to work with if you're building out this particular product across the United States. And so the good news is that when new things are going up, I don't want to give away his business, they look at him, they do the design work. It could be a $300, $400 unit going up, whatever it may be, they call him. And so he has projects now for years. And one of the things we try to teach him is if you're specialized, you're verticalized, everyone talks about you. People know who you are. They know what you do. And the word gets around that you're the specialist. You don't want a generalist helping you. You don't want to go to a doctor when you have a foot problem, but the doctor is really a generalist family doctor who doesn't know anything about your feet. It's not going to help you. It may guide you, but it's not going to help you. And one of the other things that we did this year with 3 of my friends, we started a nonprofit. And this nonprofit, it was aggressive over the next 3 years to grow Black tech firms. And our goal is to make $100 million, 1,000 digital transformation in inner city communities, and 800 net new tech job hires in the next 3 years. And so we had this big Rise event launch. David was our MC. So I thank you, David, for being not only a sponsor with Microsoft, but also the MC. And what we found out is something unique, and I want you to talk about it, is that the nonprofit world often is put in a different light than the for-profit world. And you said something so unique, which blew me away, is that you decided as a firm, you're going to specialize in nonprofit, that you couldn't, even though there's opportunities for the for-profit world reaching out to you, talking to you, you said, no, I have to stay true. And by staying true, you were able to get more business than you would have gotten if you would have did the shotgun approach, right? And so that's what happens with my community. They do a lot of shotgun. I asked my people, what do you do? Well, I got this client, I got that client, but they're all over the place. This client pays this much, but that client pays that much. Well, what if your little client finds out that they pay 10 times more than that other client? It's so confusing. And so the quick question is the difference. Is there a branding difference for nonprofits and for-profit organizations, or is it still the same thing because it goes back to the DNA, the foundation you talked about earlier today? Is there a difference between the two?
The process for developing a brand is the same.
Okay.
Right. The same process that I use to work with independent writers and speakers to when I worked with nonprofits is the exact same process. I might use different words, right? And it's interesting. So I have these set of worksheets that I would send people, and they're like, is this right? Is this for me? Because it makes it sound like I need to be an organization. I was like, no, the questions are still the same. The things that you need to respond to are still exactly the same. You just have to put it into your frame of reference. So what comes out, every brand that's developed out of the process should be unique, right? Because it's yours, it's your organization, and your organization should be unique. So the marketing of that brand is going to look different, right? The colors, the design, the words that you use, those things are going to be different, but the process for getting there is pretty much exactly the same. And so that's what's always really helpful. I think it is important that when you are looking for someone to partner with to help you develop the brand, that you work with someone who does know your industry, right? Because their frame of reference is just going to be different, right? Their understanding of your struggles, of your systems, of the type of people you're reaching, it's going to be different. And even their ability to kind of work within that audience and to create something that is innovative and different will be important, right? Because if you only do that particular industry once in a while, you'll probably got like a one-trick pony happening, right? Like it works, right? But if you're like, oh, I have 2 organizations that both deal with the same kind of topic, like they can't look the same. They can't be the same. You have to know how to dig deep and to like push yourself to create what is the differentiator, because that's really one of the things about branding is what makes you different, right? It is your reputation, but what you're really trying to get to is your position. What makes you different? So you think about Volvo. I'm always watching the car commercials, right? Even with the Super Bowl ads. I was like on Facebook, I'm just here for the ads. I'm just here for the ads. And yes, I could care less for everything else. And I was like, this ad is wasting my time. What just happened over the last 90 seconds? But like, when I think about like, okay, what car is, what brand is like, yes, if you need a safe car, this is the car that you buy. That's Volvo. Every ad that you see Volvo does, they're talking about, oh, you almost hit that little girl, but you didn't because you were in a Volvo. And we had that auto stop feature because we value safety, right? Or Subaru, everything is about love, right? The love, the adventure. You could be out doing the things you love. You could be surfing. You could be, mountaineering somewhere because that's what you love. And Subaru is going to help you do what you love, right? They're all cars. Right. And hopefully your car works, your car takes gas or electricity, like it's going to get you from to and fro. but Volvo's about safety and Subaru's about love. And that is their brand, and they're going to stick to that sucker. And every time I watch it, I'm like, yep, they're still on brand. They have not changed. They're still singing the same thing. And I don't know, one day, when I have kids, I might be like, I need a Volvo because I need safety. I don't know. Right now, I'm going to kill it with my Honda because I need gas mileage and longevity. I don't even know if that's their brand, but that's what I think of when I think about a Honda. This car is going to last me for about 15, 20 years. I'm going to ride to the ground because I'm trying to save my money. Okay, I went on a tangent. So
That's true. No, I love it. That's awesome. One other thing is, as you talked about the branding, one of the things I like to do, and I don't know why, maybe it's kind of a weirdness of me, but I like to look at organizations over the years. As you said, over the years, Volvo had talked about safety. And then you talked about Subaru, spoke about fun. And then Honda is all about reliability. Whether it's still true or not, we don't know. But it's because that's what it was built on, and that's what we learned to accept. So because of that positive momentum for those organizations, is there ever a time when an organization should rebrand or reposition their brand or change their logos, change their colors, change their identity in essence? At what point does an organization say, I think it's about time we change out who we really are, because what we were is just not coming across what we think it should be? At what point should organizations rebrand?
When the values change, right? If your branding's foundation is your values, if your values change, then you have, in essence, rebranded, right? You think about, for instance, who you were in high school, right? And someone meets you 20, 30 years later, and you're no longer that wild child, right? But you were, upstanding, school of B, right? You got yourself right. Your brand has changed, right? And that is when you have gone through a rebranding process. A lot of times people will say, oh, we're rebranding, we're changing our logo, we're changing our colors. But if your values are the same, you've just kind of like refreshed your identity, right? Which is, again, connected to building that reputation. So there might be times when you're kind of tweaking things. People tweak their logos all of the time. But a true rebrand is when you're really trying to change your reputation because your values have changed, right? The people that you really want to serve have changed. The things that point you true north, the things that you reward have changed. And so that is when you're deciding to do a rebrand. So again, if I go back to my design firm, when I went from kind of, jack of all trades, trying to serve multiple industries, to focusing specifically on nonprofits and honing in on, these specific things, I experienced a rebrand. Yes, there was, we changed our colors, we changed our logo, those things changed, but we were trying to change our reputation, right? We were trying to put a stake in the ground saying, this is who we are, this is who we serve, and therefore we are rebranding the company. So that's when you really are rebranding in the truest sense of the word. But you can easily change your identity. So say, for instance, maybe your values haven't changed, but you're realizing that your visual things, your logo, your graphics, your colors, are not in alignment with your brand values and your brand personality. You're like, oh, I'm trying to, kind of communicate like a warm and, compassionate and, human. Maybe I should like ditch the like bright red and like neon green. Like that might not be on brand. And so there you're just saying like, you know what, this is not fitting right to who we really are. Right. So let's update those things to make sure that they're really connecting. And sometimes people are redesigning their logo purely functionally, right? I've come across clients who their logo, based on how their logo was designed, it doesn't fit well across multiple things, right? Because we've had to, design for swag, pins, posters, websites, social media icons. They didn't have enough iterations or a flexible enough logo that it was going to fit each of those environments. So it may have been a very functional reason to change a logo so that it can be used in the ways that they need to use it. So those are different kind of instances where someone might be like, you know what, it's time to like retool this and get this going. Some logos from a visual identity standpoint, they're just not fresh anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Your values may not have changed, but you're like, yeah, this looks 10 years old.
No one wears
This
bell
looks
bottoms anymore.
Yeah.
this is I'm in a time warp. So let's just get to 2021. That's a valid reason as well to just refresh the identity of your materials.
Yeah.
Shala, this is David, and I've got to take this another step further with that question here and really ask you to dig a little deeper, because we're talking about companies that might be in a position where they're forced to rebrand. We talk about brand integrity. It could take years, decades to build a brand, to build a company's reputation. And it could really take just one bad mistake or one instant to tarnish it, destroy it, and they have to start over. So is this leading to really understanding the value of brand integrity, or what could be meant by that?
When I think about brand integrity, I think about staying true to who you are.
Okay.
And when you do come across that misstep, right? Because we have missteps, and there are organizations that have had missteps, individuals who have had missteps in life, and it the onus is on them to rectify or to reconcile, right? So this is why you have people apologizing on Twitter. You have people, so and so, they said some things, they fired, right? And we expect action, right? The watching world is like, you allow who to do what? Now I need reparations stepped. And so people have to make decisions to again manage the brand, to repair their reputation. And sometimes they can effectively repair it. And sometimes people just feel like so lost. I was reading in one of my kind of boards where there was unfortunately a ministry where the ministry was named after the founding person, and all his stuff came out the closet after he has passed. And they're at a place where they're like, we have no choice. Like, we have to recreate, right? Because people are hurt. People aren't going to be able to look past because this man's name is still on this sucker. And so that's it's tragic. But it's an instance where they're going to they have no choice, as you said. They must rebrand and rebuild with fresh people, with new vision, new values, new accountabilities, systems and structures to build what is trustworthy. And I think that is what is really critical when we talk about integrity, when we talk about an authentic brand. We're really talking about activating trust, right? People do business with people they trust. And when you break that trust, you're in a very tough situation. And it's hard to rebuild trust. And that's not with business, that's with just individual people, right? Like, there are things where, I ain't always done things the best as a wife. I trip sometimes. I lose my ever loving mind every now and then. And my husband has been like, Shala, trust has been broken. And we need to I'm gonna have to work through things. Like, I ain't been cheating on my husband, y'all. Let me just be clear. We faithful in the Graham household, but there are just things, right, that maybe I've said or that I did that didn't land right. And we as people, we have to build trust. And when we lose trust on any level, you got to repair that. And because we're devoted to marriage, I can't be like, let's rebrand and get you a new wife. Like, that's not going to happen. I got to figure that out, right? I got to figure out how to rebuild trust. He's got to figure out how to rebuild trust. And we got to push through because we're devoted to our brand, if you will, our marriage, our relationship as a couple. So it happens, man. It's on every level. You can make applications to it.
This is Danny, by the way. I think that is quite funny with the marriage about let's rebrand and get your new spouse. But one of
My
the
wife
things
would
you
have
said,
gotten rid of me a million times.
I know, because of my crazy, we both, Dave and I, even though we're identical, we're opposite as well. But one of the things that we're identical about is we have ideas, lots of crazy ideas, and sometimes our wives have to calm us down because we want to do everything, and when you do everything, nothing gets done. So one of the things you said that was kind of funny and is true is now with social media, when someone comes out and does something, everybody sees it, and everyone can say, "What? Oh, no, we're not going to talk to that company anymore." And next thing you know, you see these leaders step down. Either they were racist or they did things and treated their employees unfair, like maybe they treated women unfair. Whatever the reason is, they've had to step down, and the organization had to let them go. Recently, the CEO and president for the Seattle Mariners
Mm.
had said something very
Mhm.
derogatory for 45 minutes about the Asian culture.
Mm.
And he had said, "I'll do whatever it takes to make up for what I did. I'm sorry." And then a week later, he had to resign. He's the present CEO of the Mariners, right? This is like the top dog, but he was hurting the brand.
Yep.
So when we think about these effects that take place, and a lot of people want to be on all those social media platforms. Right now, the new platform is Clubhouse, and Dave and I are starting to explore that. But everyone's on these platforms, and when they mess up, everyone hears it. So you want to make money off these platforms, but at the same time, it can actually destroy you as well if you make these remarks of racism and or sexism and things like that. Which platform do you feel has been the most effective to help take your brand to the next level or to continue to build your brand? Because marketing is so expensive nowadays, and everyone has to be price conscious on what they do and how much they spend on marketing. And so if you're a small business like my business or Dave's business, for example, which brand or which platform is probably going to be the most effective for that individual company?
That answer is really dependent upon your audience,
Oh,
Mm.
mm,
right? So there are people who are killing it on Facebook,
mm-hmm,
right? But their audience is likely not, you know, Gen Z,
yep,
right? The current high school, college aged people, right? It's probably people who our age, 30s and 40s, 50s, right? Because Facebook came up with us. And so it's a very casual, you can do long form, you can share articles. And so there's lots of engagements around groups, right? People are in groups, they're connecting in that way. So there's that platform for that purpose, right? There are people who are on Instagram. So as a photographer, I've found clients through Instagram. I tend to bring in my clients through Google, because I believe strongly in having strong SEO, so I can get the free advertisement. So people usually find me on Google, but the next platform, social media platform that they find me on is on Instagram. And so I even had a client say, "I'm not really on Instagram, but I know creative people like you are." So I did a hashtag for like DC or Maryland photographers, and that's how I found you. So Instagram tends to be a little more creative, visually driven, quick, easy ingesting, and you get into a younger audience, right? Um, there aren't as many older Gen Xers, right? I still, even though I was born in 82, I still identify as Gen X, or like, what do they call it? Zennials. I'm right in between, daggone. I write reports on a typewriter, okay? So I don't like to be stuck in a millennial generation. But they're not as older, right? Those are the people who are going to adopt Instagram a little bit later. But there are lots of 20, 30, 40s on Instagram who like to consume visual video kind of content. YouTube is kind of, YouTube, after Google, YouTube is the second biggest search engine,
Yep, it
right?
is.
If you're not searching on Google, you searching on YouTube because you need like the how to fix what, and like, you need those particular videos so that you're going on that platform. So YouTube can be a great channel for, all of the people who are doing the vlogs, the trainings, the following along. Like my nieces and nephews who are like 3, 4, and 5, they know how to work YouTube. They're like, where's the YouTube, Auntie Shala? And they know how to work that. Like, so YouTube has a really large audience and demographics. We got 5-year-olds making bank on YouTube because they're like, doing the 5-year-old perspective on, toy testing, right? They're like, this is some targeted feedback here. And if I get this 5-year-old's vote of confidence on these Legos, we about to get it. So it's very interesting what people are doing on these platforms. When Twitter is kind of phasing down, in my opinion. I've kind of aborted Twitter. I was like, I ain't got time for all this. This is a whole lot. But I find more professionals on Twitter, right? Because they're commenting on politics or commenting on like social things. There is quite a bit of casual things, a whole lot of, they got Black Twitter, folk, wilding out on different situations. But in my professional world, Twitter was a very like leading community for those things. So it really depends on who you're reaching. I have not got into Clubhouse yet. I had to like sit back. I was like, what is this Clubhouse thing? Like, I don't know what this is. I'm already tired. So I don't know if I got the mental energy and bandwidth to like, figure this thing out. TikTok is definitely Gen Z, right? And early millennials, but mostly Gen Z. And again, I was like, nah, I'm tired. I know I used to be a youth pastor. So I was like, oh, I should probably be on TikTok, but Pastor Shala ain't got the energy. I'm just gonna have to love y'all to Jesus in person because I can't handle it. But again, to answer your question, it all depends on your audience and who you're trying to reach. So you have to choose a platform that is going to help you reach your particular audience, where they live, what they're active on, because there's no point in just being on the quote unquote leading platform that has the most people if your people are not there and they're not engaging in the content and the kind of content that you want to put out.
This is David, Shala, and I appreciate what you shared, because as a public speaking trainer and a public speaking coach, I often emphasize that it's not about you, it's about them. It's all about your audience, and where they are is where you need to be. So that really helps us to understand where we should be putting our efforts, our time, and focus. And so for TikTok, that's not for me. That's not what I do. And part of it is I don't know how to use it. But the other part is it's not really a focus for where my target audience is, as I'm focusing on executives, professionals, C-suite. They're not on TikTok. At least God, they shouldn't be. So anyways, in this mind, I have a question, because we've been talking so much about building your brand right. We talk often about, or at least throughout this podcast, about the importance of trust. Are there any other traits that you would say are vital for a successful brand? I mean, we talk about being authentic, we talk about being memorable, we talk about fun, or you mentioned earlier about being edgy. Are there any other traits that we could keep in mind for building a right, successful brand?
Yeah.
So in addition to, that frequency or consistency, right, and having deep rooted values, I think right now in our current climate, being a really good storyteller, having that human focused connection is really, really important. As people have been on social media, right? If we think back 10 years, a lot of people on social media, they were just like shouting, right? They're selling their stuff. This is coming out. This product is here. Check out how good this is. When we were writing things for our websites, we're thinking about our keyword density. What does Google like? And I still think about that. I ain't gonna lie. I still think about making sure my words are right, because again, I've already communicated that I drive a lot of traffic to my business from Google. But the storytelling piece, the being able to communicate who you are and what you stand for, and invite people into the journey to be real, to be authentic, to be a human being, is valuable, right? Because again, people connect with people, and they want to be a part of, they want to see who you are. So even if you think about, Taylor Swift, right? I don't know if she's still a thing, but I remember looking at her Instagram profile like 2017, 2018. And if all she did was post her music on all of her things, like people like, oh, I can listen to your music. I can download your album on Spotify and keep it moving. But it was the personal touch, right? It was seeing her with her friends or with her dog or with her whatever. It's that personal touch. It's letting you know that she's a real human being that drives the interaction. And so even now on Instagram in particular, that's the platform I tend to spend most of my time on. You see people trying to create engagement, right? Sponsors who want to sponsor people, they look at your engagement rates, how many people like, how many people comment on your post. And in order to get people to comment on your post, you have to draw them in with a story, with a question, with something that makes them feel like, yes, I need to take my 5 seconds to hit comment and like type these emojis and then move on with my day. Like there has to be something that makes them feel like they need, like, I got to engage in this.
Right.
And so I would say be a storyteller, make sure that you feel human, right? Because again, when it's corporate and you're just the organization, people don't want that. People want to feel like, yes, you care about the people. So be a
Love it.
storyteller, is
Yeah.
what I would say as we're, kind of, moving forward. And I think, David, you said this earlier, make sure that you're an expert, right? You got to be an expert at something, right? So in the midst of being personable, telling your stories, you got to know what you're an expert at. And really, that's really what your brand is, like what makes you unique, right? You need to be able to sprinkle that in so people have a reason to follow you, especially if you're a business. They have a reason to follow you because you have the nuggets of wisdom that they need. And so they're going to be more likely to stick in and watch.
Well, Shala, we're definitely grateful to have you on and appreciate the friendship over the years, the partnership and building. Not only we talk about our businesses, but really the ministries that we're a part of. And if we want to build the right brand, it's conversations like this we have to have. We have to be willing to be honest. We have to be open. We have to be able to seek direction from professionals such as yourself. And if you want to know more about Shala, you can find her at shalawgraham.com, or you can also look at her ministry at callingqualified.org. Shala, it's such a joy to have you on. Dan and I are so honored and so blessed to call you friend, and so excited to know that you are an HU graduate. So we love that part. But you mentioned something even earlier about storytelling. We're going to actually dig into that in a future episode. So thank you for joining our podcast today. Thank you for joining our program. We look forward to seeing every one of you on the next episode of Twins Talk It Up. We'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you, Shala, again for coming on with us.
You're welcome.